We live in an age of slogans. Stand with Ukraine, free Palestine, support Israel, resist imperialism, and so on. These catchphrases echo through our streets and our campuses. They appear on BBC television because the BBC doesn't know how to switch off its cameras when they're recording Glastonbury slogans. Yet, in the middle of these tribal alignments, we risk forgetting something essential, that the people most brutalized by authoritarian regimes often live under them. Ordinary Russians and Gazans, far from being simply opponents or heroes in our simplified moral maps, are in fact themselves completely brutalized, tortured, and oppressed by their regimes. It's fashionable for the West to divide the world into blocks of good and evil, East and West, oppressor, oppressed, the innocent, the damned. And this reflects a kind of moral tribalism, simplifies a complex reality into stupid slogans. It blinds us to the basic fact that ordinary people, people with families, aspirations, fears, often suffer the most under regimes that profess to act in their name. Consider the case of Ahmed al-Masri, a young pharmacist in Gaza who dared to hold a placard simply stating, "Hamas does not represent us." For this, Hamas abducted him, shattered his legs with crowbars, and left him bleeding in the sun. Such cruelty is neither hidden nor sporadic, it is systematic. Videos circulate on social media in Arabic showing blindfolded men chained to ceilings, beaten with iron rods. It's violence performed as a warning to all who would question the ruler's monopoly on suffering and victimhood. And we saw all this playing out years ago with the IRA. Yet in Western capitals, some profess solidarity with Gaza while refusing to acknowledge this terror. What stupidity. You'll find no vigils for Uday Rabi, tortured to death by Hamas for chanting no to Hamas, no campus encampments, no editorials in progressive newspapers, because to recognize that Hamas brutalizes Palestinians as readily as it attacks Israelis would complicate the tidy narrative of resistance. This hypocrisy is mirrored in our posture towards Russia as well. To speak of Russian aggression is correct, but it's incomplete. Without Russia itself, the state is engaged in an orgy of repression within Russia itself. The activist Artyom Kamadin was dragged from his home, beaten and tortured on camera for reading an anti-war poem. He was forced to apologize to the nation while bleeding as policemen cheered. In Belarus, over 1,000 political prisoners remain in solitary cells for nothing more than demanding free elections. One can look to Navalny's death in the polar war colony, a place purpose-built to extinguish the human spirit, to see what Vladimir Putin's system reserves for its most determined critics, its own critics. We must grasp that the regimes of Gaza, Russia, Belarus, Iran rely on exactly the same methods: systematic torture, theatrical confessions, and the constant threat of annihilation. Their objective is to suffocate dissent so thoroughly that hope itself becomes dangerous. And the machinery of terror is not incidental to their rule, it is their rule. That's why Western tribalism is so corrosive. When we lump entire societies together, Russians as imperialists, Gazans as victims without agency, we conspire in the erasure of individuals who resist. We become complicit in their isolation. We forget that the first victims of tyranny are always those under its immediate authority. Moreover, Western silence about Hamas atrocities against Palestinians betrays the very ideals we claim to cherish. It's easy to condemn brutality when it comes from your adversaries. It takes integrity to condemn it when it comes from those you imagine as allies. If you cannot denounce Hamas's torture, you have no business proclaiming yourself a defender of human rights. Likewise, when Russia imprisons poets and disappears journalists, Western governments must do more than issue perfunctory statements. Solidarity must be real, not rhetorical. If we forget that ordinary Russians also live in fear, we risk descending into collective hatred, forgetting that resistance exists even in the darkest places. That is why it is important to insist on a more precise moral vocabulary. It's why we must say the names of the tortured and the disappeared. When we treat entire populations as monoliths, We repeat the logic of their oppressors who deny the humanity of anyone who dares to stand apart. It's the Russian propagandists who go on about, oh, you've got Russophobia. There's no such word, and it's absurd. In Gaza, in Belarus, in Russia, the truth is the same. Dissent is life-threatening. To say no is to risk losing everything. If we cannot honour that courage impartially, then our claims to moral seriousness are hollow. So we need to end this tribalism and the stupid slogans. We need to look clearly without sentimentality or selective outrage at the faces of the bruised and the broken and recognise them as the truest patriots of all.